Hi, I'm Sarah Haydu. I promised this story is going to be interesting. Kindly sit down and listen very good. The first time I noticed the difference, it wasn't the rain. It was the silence between the rain. The wooden room belonged to my grandmother. Not in the legal sense, no papers, no ownership battles, but in the way her scent clung to the curtains, and the way the floor creaked like it remembered her footsteps. It stood at the edge of a quiet village, built long before I was born, with timber walls that darkened each rainy season as though they were drinking the storm. When I was younger, rain meant warmth there. You could hear it before it came, the slow gathering of clouds, the wind threading through palm leaves, the distant roll of thunder that felt more like a warning than a threat. Then it would begin, softly at first, a few scattered drops tapping on the roof, hesitant, like a stranger knocking politely. Inside, everything responded. The wooden beams would shift. The windows would tremble slightly in their frames. The room would inhale the damp air and release that deep, earthy smell, old wood, wet soil, a hint of something almost sweet. My grandmother used to say it was the house remembering the forest it came from. We would sit together on a woven mat, wrapped in a thick cloth, listening, not talking much. The rain itself did the talking. It drummed on the roof in uneven rhythms, sometimes gentle, sometimes insistent. Water slid down the windows in crooked lines, distorting the outside world into something dreamlike. The oil lamp flickered, shadows moving slowly along the walls like quiet guests. It was never lonely there. Even in silence, you felt watched, but not in a way that frightened you. More like the house was aware, like it had a memory, a presence. I didn't question it then. Children rarely do. Years later, I moved into a modern apartment. It was everything people said comfort should be. Clean lines, smooth walls, bright lighting, windows that shut so tightly you could barely hear the outside world unless you wanted to. The floors didn't creak. The doors didn't complain. Nothing shifted or sighed. It was quiet in a different way. Controlled. Predictable. At first, I liked it. Rain became something I could turn on or off, not literally, but close enough. I could play recordings of rainfall through my phone, adjust the volume, choose between light drizzle or heavy storm. Sometimes I'd let it play while I worked or tried to sleep. It sounded right, almost too right, but something was missing. The first night it bothered me. It was raining for real, not a recording, not something filtered through speakers. A proper storm, loud and heavy, pressing against the windows of my apartment. The sky flashed occasionally, lighting up the room in brief, cold bursts. I turned off the artificial rain, sat still, listened. At first, it felt comforting, familiar, even. The rhythm was there, the steady drumming, the distant thunder rolling through the sky. But then, there was nothing else. No shifting beams. No soft groan of wood expanding. No subtle movement of a house adjusting itself around the storm. Just rain, hitting glass, and silence behind it. It made the room feel hollow. Like the rain wasn't entering, just knocking, endlessly, with no response. I remember standing up and walking to the window, placing my hand against the cool glass. Outside, the world blurred under the downpour. Lights stretched into long streets. Cars passed like ghosts. Inside, everything remained still, too still. And that's when I noticed it. The gap between the raindrops. In my grandmother's house, the rain filled everything. Even when it paused, the house carried the sound forward, the creaks, the whispers, the soft breathing of wood. Here, when the rain hesitated, the silence dropped hard, like something had been cut off. I didn't sleep well that night. Not because of fear, at least. That's what I told myself, but because the silence felt incomplete, like a sentence that never finished. So I turned the recording back on, let the artificial rain fill the room, and eventually I slept. It became a habit after that. Whenever it rained, I played the recorded version alongside it. Real rain outside, artificial rain inside, layered together. It helped. The emptiness softened. The silence didn't feel so abrupt. It was almost like stitching two worlds together, one that felt too distant and one that felt too controlled. Almost. A few weeks later, something strange happened. It was another rainy night. Heavy, steady, relentless. I had my usual setup, the recording playing softly through my phone, blending with the storm outside. I was lying in bed, half asleep, drifting in that place where thoughts blur and time loosens. And then I heard it. A creak. Soft, slow, deliberate. I opened my eyes. The rain continued, unchanged. The recording still played, looping its perfect, consistent rhythm, but the creak didn't belong to either of them. It was different, unpolished, irregular, alive. I sat up, listened. Nothing. Just rain again. I told myself it was the building settling. Apartments do that sometimes, right? Even modern ones. Still, it lingered in my mind. That sound. It didn't feel like concrete or steel. It felt like wood. Over the next few nights, it happened again. Not always. Not predictably. Just enough to make me notice. A faint shift. A quiet groan. Once, what sounded like a soft knock, though that might have been my imagination. Each time, it came during the rain. Never when the sky was clear. I started turning off the recording, just to listen. At first, I thought I'd proven myself wrong. There was nothing unusual, just the rain hitting the windows. The distant hum of the city softened by the storm. But then, on one particularly quiet pause between the downpour, it came again. Longer this time. A slow, stretching creak, as if something were adjusting its weight. Inside the walls. I stood up immediately. Checked the door. Locked. Checked the windows. Sealed. Everything exactly as it should be. Yet the feeling from my grandmother's house crept back into the room, the sense that the space was aware, watching, not hostile, just present. That's when the thought came, uninvited, uncomfortable. What if the silence in this apartment wasn't natural? What if something had filled it? I laughed it off, of course. That's what you do. You find logic. Blame pipes, temperature changes, building structure. But logic didn't explain why it only happened when it rained, or why the sounds felt familiar. One night, I decided to test something. I waited for the rain, turned off all recordings, sat in complete darkness, the only light coming from occasional flashes of lightning. And I listened. Not just to the rain, to the space between it. At first, nothing. Then a creak. Closer this time. Followed by a soft, almost inaudible shift. Like something settling into place. I didn't move. Didn't breathe too loudly. Just listened. And then, very faintly, a second sound. Not wood. Not rain. Something like a sigh. I turned on the light immediately. The room snapped back into its clean, modern certainty. Smooth walls, still air, nothing out of place. But the feeling didn't leave. I haven't gone back to my grandmother's house in years. Sometimes I wonder if I should. If I'd walk in and find it exactly as I remember, warm, breathing, alive with the sound of rain. Or if I'd find it empty, silent, like something had followed me. These days, when it rains, I still play the recordings. Not for comfort, but to cover the gaps. Because I've started to notice something I can't explain when I don't. The silence between the rain lasts just a little longer than it should, and in that extra moment it sounds like something is trying to remember how to breathe. Kindly like, comment, and subscribe to my channels. Remain blessed.